r/NoSleep. There were 6 shadows in the campfire light, but only 5 of us were there. The crackling campfire cast dancing shadows across the clearing, as the tall pine trees swayed gently in the cool mountain breeze. It had taken us hours to hike to this secluded spot, but it was worth it. The air was crisp, the stars above were endless, and we were far away from the humdrum of our small-town lives. This trip was our last hurrah before we all went our separate ways for college. It was just the 5 of us, Ryan, the de facto leader of our group, always brimming with bad jokes and worse plans, Sarah, my childhood best friend, whose cautious nature balanced Ryan's recklessness, Kevin, the quiet one, but sharp-witted when he chose to speak, Mia, who was bold and brash but fiercely protective, and me, the quiet observer who somehow always ended up in the middle of their chaos. I remember the night started normally enough. We roasted marshmallows, shared ghost stories, and laughed under the infinite sky. But then, at some point, Sarah paused mid-sentence, her eyes narrowing as she stared into the circle of chairs around the fire. "Hey," she said softly, "isn't this chair new?" I followed her gaze. A 6th chair had somehow joined the circle. It was plain, weathered wood, not the collapsible camping chairs we had brought. My stomach tightened. "Probably left here by someone before us," Ryan said with a shrug, but his voice was unconvincing. "No way," Mia retorted. "This spot hasn't been used in ages. Look around, it's untouched." We all exchanged uneasy glances, but no one wanted to be the one to voice how deeply unsettling it was. We carried on, trying to ignore the chair's presence, though its shadow seemed darker than the rest, absorbing the firelight instead of reflecting it. At some point, Kevin stood up and said he was going to get more firewood. He'd been gone for about 15 minutes when the first truly strange thing happened. From the edge of the clearing, we heard Kevin's voice. "Guys, I'm back. Got the firewood." But Kevin was still sitting in his chair, staring at the fire. I froze. The others exchanged panicked glances. "Mia," I whispered, "is Kevin here or over there?" Mia shook her head. "No. He's here. Right here." The voice called out again. "Come on, guys, help me carry it." Kevin, the one sitting by the fire, looked up sharply. "I didn't say that," he murmured, his voice trembling. Ryan stood up abruptly, grabbing the flashlight. "Stay here," he said, his usual bravado gone. He took a few cautious steps toward the tree line, shining the light into the darkness. The trees cast long, eerie shadows, but the beam illuminated nothing but empty woods. When he came back, his face was pale. "There's no one out there," he said. None of us slept that night. The next day, we packed up early, determined to leave as soon as possible. But when we reached the trailhead, something was wrong. The path we had hiked the day before wasn't there. It wasn't overgrown or hard to see, it simply wasn't there. The clearing we had camped in was surrounded by dense woods with no discernible trail leading out. "This isn't possible," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. "We came this way. I remember the big oak tree and the moss-covered rocks." We retraced our steps, trying to find any sign of the path, but the more we looked, the more disoriented we became. It was as if the forest was shifting, warping around us. The tension among us grew, and it wasn't long before we started snapping at each other. "Let's just stay together," I said finally. "We'll figure it out." We returned to the campsite, exhausted and scared. It was nearly sunset when Mia noticed something chilling. There were 6 tents. "Whose is that?" she asked, pointing to the extra tent. We all stared at it, dumbfounded. The tent was identical to ours, the same brand and color, but none of us had set it up. Ryan unzipped it cautiously, revealing an empty sleeping bag and a backpack filled with canned food and a flashlight. It looked as though someone had been camping with us the whole time. "All right," Ryan said, his voice shaking. "I'm done with this. We're leaving, trail or no trail. Everyone grab your things. Now." As darkness fell, the forest seemed to close in tighter around us. The wind carried faint whispers, just at the edge of hearing. Twigs snapped, leaves rustled, and shadows moved where no one should have been. By the time we reached a small clearing, we were frantic, practically running. Ryan turned to do a head count, his face going pale. "There are 6 of us," he whispered. "No," Sarah said firmly. "There are 5. There are 5 of us." But when we counted, there were 6 shadows stretching out on the ground. The firelight flickered, and the 6th shadow moved. It shifted slightly, as if turning its head to look at us. I spun around, expecting to see someone standing there. But there was nothing. Just empty space. "Run," Kevin said, his voice barely above a whisper. We bolted through the woods, panic driving us forward. Branches scratched at our faces, and the whispers grew louder, almost chanting. I didn't know where we were running, only that we had to get away from that clearing. Somewhere along the way, we lost Sarah. Then Kevin. I screamed their names, but the forest swallowed the sound. Ryan grabbed my arm, pulling me forward. When we finally stumbled into another clearing, there was a single lantern glowing faintly in the center. Next to it was the sixth chair. And sitting in it was Sarah. Except it wasn't Sarah. Her face was pale, her eyes dark and hollow, and her smile stretched too wide. "We're all here now," she said, her voice echoing unnaturally. "Why don't you stay a while?" Ryan grabbed my hand, and we ran again, leaving the light in the chair, and whatever was in it, behind. I don't know how we made it out. At some point, the trees thinned, and we stumbled onto the highway. A passing truck driver stopped, and I sobbed as I told him what had happened. Ryan and I were the only ones left. The police said there was no sign of a campsite or our friends. Just an empty clearing deep in the woods. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear Sarah's voice calling my name. And when I turn off the lights, there are 6 shadows in my room. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear Sarah's voice calling my name. And when I turn off the lights, there are 6 shadows in my room. It's been months since that camping trip, but the memories haven't faded. If anything, they've become sharper, like shards of glass embedded in my brain. The nights are the worst. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, the trauma of what happened manifesting in eerie, irrational ways. But the shadows are real. Every night, I count them. 5 that match the shapes of the furniture in my room, and a 6th, long, thin, and slightly hunched, stretching across the floor and up the wall. No matter where I move, it lingers in the periphery, as if it's waiting. Watching. I've tried to tell people about what happened, but they look at me like I'm crazy. The police, my parents, even Ryan. He's been distant since we got back, refusing to talk about what happened in the woods. Last week, he blocked my number after I sent him a long text about the shadows. But I know he sees them too. He must. One night, I wake up to the sound of faint rustling. My bedroom window is open, the curtains billowing softly in the breeze. I don't remember opening it. The air smells of pine and damp earth, a smell I haven't been able to forget since that night in the forest. "Jenny," a voice whispers, low and gravelly. It's coming from the corner of the room, where the 6th shadow gathers the darkest. I freeze, my breath caught in my throat. "Who's there?" I manage to croak, my voice trembling. The shadow twitches. For a moment, it looks like it's stretching upward, elongating unnaturally, its head tilting toward me. "You left us behind," it says, the voice overlapping with a chorus of others. "Come back." I scramble for the bedside lamp, but the bulb flickers and dies. My phone won't turn on either. The air grows heavy, and my ears ring with the faint sound of distant whispers. They're saying my name over and over again, in a tone that's both mocking and pleading. "Leave me alone." I scream, grabbing the first thing I can find, a book, and hurling it at the shadow. It vanishes for a moment, the darkness dispersing, but it doesn't feel like it's gone. Just hiding. The next morning, I can't stay in the house. I pack a bag and drive aimlessly, trying to outrun whatever is happening to me. The woods are calling me back, but I refuse to listen. I need answers, not another nightmare. I find myself at the library, poring over old maps and local legends. It doesn't take long to uncover a chilling pattern. The area where we camped is infamous for disappearances. Groups of hikers, campers, even rangers, gone without a trace. Some say it's cursed, others blame the terrain, claiming people get lost and never find their way out. But one account catches my eye. It's a diary entry from 1978, written by a woman who survived a similar ordeal. She described seeing shadows that didn't belong, hearing voices of people she thought were her friends, and feeling a constant, oppressive presence that followed her even after she escaped. Her final entry reads, "It doesn't end. They won't let me go. They keep calling me back. And one day, I'll have to answer." Desperation takes hold. That night, I drive to Ryan's house. He doesn't answer when I knock, but his car's in the driveway, so I know he's home. I pound on the door until he finally opens it, his face pale and gaunt. "Jenny," he says, his voice hollow. "You shouldn't have come." "I can't do this anymore, Ryan," I plead. "They're still with us. The shadows, the voices, They're everywhere. We need to figure out what's happening. Ryan shakes his head, his eyes darting around nervously. It's too late. I've tried everything, priests, shamans, even moving cities. They always find me. And now you've brought them here. A chill runs down my spine. What do you mean? They're not just shadows, Jenny. They're pieces of us. Fractured parts. We left them behind in that forest, and they're trying to come back. That night, I sleep at Ryan's house, though sleep is a generous term for the restless tossing and turning we both endure. Around 3 a.m., I wake up to the sound of faint footsteps. At first, I think it's Ryan, but then I see him sitting bolt upright on the couch, staring at the darkened hallway. "They're here," he whispers. The footsteps grow louder, heavier, until they stop just outside the living room. The air turns icy, and the sixth shadow appears on the wall, stretching unnaturally long. But this time, it's not alone. There are more shadows, all warped and twisted, creeping along the walls and ceiling, surrounding us. "We need to go back," Ryan says, his voice trembling. "It's the only way to end this." By dawn, we're back in the woods, retracing our steps to the cursed campsite. The forest feels alive, its trees whispering in a language I can't understand. The path twists and turns in ways that don't make sense, but it leads us straight to the clearing. The fire pit is still there, surrounded by 6 chairs. The 6th chair is no longer weathered wood, it's shiny and new, identical to the ones we brought. "We're here," Ryan says, his voice flat. The air grows heavy, and the shadows gather in the center of the circle. They shift and swirl, taking on vague, human shapes. Faces form in the darkness, Kevin's, Sarah's, Mia's. Their eyes are hollow, their mouths twisted into grotesque smiles. "You left us," they say in unison, their voices a cacophony of anguish and anger. "Now it's your turn." Ryan grabs my hand, pulling me toward the path. "Run!" he screams. But I can't move. The shadows stretch toward me, their cold tendrils wrapping around my ankles. The faces grow clearer, more defined. Kevin's mouth opens, and a guttural scream fills the clearing. "I'm sorry." I cry. "I'm so sorry." The shadows pause, their heads tilting as if considering my words. Then, they surge forward. I wake up in my car, parked at the edge of the forest. The sun is rising, casting long shadows across the road. My phone buzzes with missed calls and messages, but I ignore them. Ryan is gone. The others are gone. But I'm still here. For now. As I drive away, I glance in the rearview mirror. There are 6 shadows in the backseat,